Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I have a funny article actually. Why? Because it shows how the Ukrainians have, or the ones in charge of Ukraine, or the ones who wrote this article, and these are from Associated Press, have a lack of self-awareness. When you have a lack of self-awareness, you could become a hypocrite immediately, or a person who claims, hey, you're not supposed to do that, but you have lack of self-awareness. You don't understand that that's exactly what I did, so I should not say that, and accuse them of doing something that I've done, So I'm going to show you. Let's read that title first, and then we're going to discuss it because it's so ridiculous. And remember, this is an article that they pretend it's serious, from Associated Press, a serious media outlet, and it's so tarded. Right here, AOL, pop, Associated Press, today, December 9th, 2023. Ukraine says any Russian presidential voting in its occupied regions would be null and void. Right? Okay. I don't think so. Cuckoo. Bow. Cuckoo. Bow. Okay. So it says here, Ukraine on Saturday condemned Russia's intention to organize presidential election voting in occupied Ukrainian territory next year. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said any such balloting held in the occupied regions in the country would be null and void, and pledged that any international observers sent to monitor the Russian election will, unquote, face criminal responsibility. Are you going to assassinate them? Because it seems like this is what these guys are doing in business of. So if you do something you don't like, they call you an enemy of the state, traitor, and they, like the guy in Moscow region a few days ago. And I'm quoting. We call on the international community to resolutely condemn Russia's intention to hold presidential elections in the occupied Ukraine territories and to impose sanctions on those involved in the organization and conduct, Ukraine's foreign ministry said. All right, my friends, they're going to have an election in 2024, Putin, on the 17th of March 2024. All right, well, it says here, Russian authorities are still pondering whether to arrange the voting in Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. I'm going to show you the map. Moscow illegally annexed the 4 regions in September 2022, but only controls parts of them. That means they have to conquer more so they can control all of them. That's their intent as well. What a coincidence. So remember, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson. So this is Ukraine, this is part of wherever it is, and you have here Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. And they didn't even mention, interestingly enough, the Crimean Peninsula. That's very interesting, very interesting. That means they got okay with that one, it seems, right here. Do you see here anything like that? No. So that means they're okay with Crimea. They forgot about Crimea. Now let me tell you. See these things, this is the borders where this oblast, supposedly they're all going. Now the Russians can stop here if they want and say that's the end of it. And this is the new territory. They don't have to go how the Ukrainians cut it and determined the administration of, let's say, Donetsk is. So they got, let's say, half of Donetsk, right? The half of Donetsk here, and say, no, that one we don't consider Donetsk. That's your Donetsk. Like North Macedonia and Macedonia. That's your Macedonia, this is my Macedonia. This is North Donetsk, this is South Donetsk. This is South Zaporozhye, that's North Zaporozhye. This is South Kherson, North Kherson. And Luhansk, the same thing, almost the whole thing here. They can do this. But my point is this, I said self-awareness, lack of. So this is Ukraine. Do you remember, let's put it differently. Do you remember when the coup d'etat occurred in 2014 in Ukraine? Remember that was a legitimate government. Good or bad, it was legitimate. It was voted by the entire, that's my point, entire Ukrainian. So Ukraine in its entirety voted, and Viktor Yanukovych became the president. Legally voted, all as corrupt as it was and is right now. Let's put aside, corruption is everywhere, more or less. So Yanukovych was the legitimate president with a government, legitimate. Some people from outside with some traitors from inside, that's how they're called, they decided to overthrow the government, right? They say it was a spontaneous. Yeah, okay, all right. And then they overthrew the legitimate government and the president. They overthrew it through a coup d'etat. Now that's illegal. It's not nowhere in the Constitution says you can organize such a thing. So that was an illegal act. It was recognized, the new leaders, they were recognized by the Western countries, the ones that love democracy. Somehow. Why? Because maybe they were involved. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. I remember only Victoria Nuland and her famous telephone conversation with the then US ambassador to Kiev. All right. Okay. So they took over, the new guys. You can call them traitors because they overthrew a legitimate government. That's treason with, some say, the help of outside agencies. Okay? Now, those guys over here in Donbass, right? Those guys in Donbass, in this area, they didn't recognize the coup d'etat. They say, you know what? That's illegal. You can't do that. Those guys that took control in Kiev said, shut the hell up, do what I'm telling you to do. And these guys said, no, we're gonna be out. We're breaking away from you. We don't want to have anything to do with you. And Kiev sent military tanks and everything to destroy those guys, to bring them back to Ukraine. They had no legitimacy, the guys in Kiev, because they overthrew a government, legitimate government. So they had no legitimacy. And then, this is the point I was trying to get to, this right now. They conducted elections, they organized elections. These guys in Kiev, they conducted elections without the guys in Donbass. So whomever was elected, then the future Poroshenko, elected 2 times, and then what's his name, Zelensky, they were all elected, click, as the resultant of a coup d'etat, and not voted by the entire Ukraine. So they were actually voted by everybody but this region right here, by the Donbass. They didn't vote. They didn't vote for those guys. So those guys were illegitimate. And now they say, no, those regions cannot vote for this guy right here. Because why? Because they're part of our country. So my point is this. The guys in Kiev were not voted by the all Ukrainians. Because obviously, boom, boom, pam, pam. And there was after a coup d'etat. And now the same guys tell the Russians, you can't organize because those guys actually are not yours, are ours. But they don't want to be yours. They don't want to be yours. And besides, you're not legitimate. Because you were not voted by the Ukrainians, by the whole guys. Those guys did not vote for you. We're not even organized, they didn't even organize elections for you. What are you talking about? You're illegitimate. Bye-bye. Why? Since 2014, March, or whatever that was, the so-called Maidan, class 2, round 2, whatever it was. So that's why these guys say, you can have that, but you are not legitimate to start with. I always make this little analogy. Remember, let's say, I'm going to give you the English example. The kings in England. I know they had a little, I would say policy, it was not a policy, I don't know how you call it, edict, whatever, that a illegitimate son of someone, from a certain kind of dynasty, or family, cannot become king, because he was illegitimate. He was illegitimate because that was conceived with someone outside of marriage, or the person who conceived with was not married to the person, or that person was not of a certain kind of noble rank. They had their rules and regulations. Now, let's say the father of one of these, they called bastards, that's the term, will, let's say, get the throne somehow. If that kid that was a bastard would become the leader, the king, it was illegitimate. Who was that? William the Bastard, wasn't he? One of those guys. So he was the legitimate, but illegitimate, because he would not have been allowed to become a king because he didn't check the criteria. Like, let's say I was born outside the United States of America. I could never run for US president. Or let's say I'm 33 years old. I can't run for the office of the president of the United States of America. That's the law. That's the way it is. But somehow I just everybody, and I get over there and I elect myself. I got over there through fraud. Now everything that comes after me, my son, his son, all those guys are all illegitimate because I broke the course of legitimacy through my coup d'etat, my revolution, me posing as a fraud, as a bastard on the throne. So the same is over here. Those guys who overthrew the government in 2014, those were not the legitimate guys because they destroyed something that was legitimate. When they came to power, even though some weasels said, we recognize you. By law, they were not the real rulers, legitimate rulers of Ukraine. And somehow they organized elections without the Donbass. They sent tanks towards the Donbass, the illegitimate bastard son. You see what I'm talking about? And from there, they organized elections without that part. And then another election without that part. That's the sons of the bastard, which could be legitimate because he married someone and they had a legitimate son. But he was illegitimate organizing that real hard. You're gonna make me a son right now. I don't know, Josanella or something. Okay? So this is what these guys. You can't have that with those guys because those guys are not yours. So don't consider those. It's null and void. But we are legitimate because we came in power and voted without those guys' consent. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.